Motoring 93 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas for brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service. Trust your car to Midas.
This is a 1930 Lasalle 340 Sport Roadster. Yeah, it's a classic collectible for sure. What's it worth? Well, obviously it's worth what anyone is willing to pay for it. But later on, we're going to try and determine whether the current economic recession is having an effect on the price of classic cars like this one. Is it a buyer's or seller's market? And what's hot and what's not? That's later on. But first, I know we're all trying to forget the winter of '93, but bear with us just a moment, because our first story is about a car manufacturer that is trying to convince its customers to drive their exotic cars in the winter. And the story is also about a tire company that believes it has developed the best snow tire in the world.
One of the drawbacks to owning a top-of-the-line sports car like a Porsche is that most owners won't drive it in the winter. Well, Porsche not only believes its cars should be driven in the snow, they took some journalists to northern Ontario to prove they could also handle the slippery conditions.
Our objective was to determine whether a Porsche car like the 911 Carrera 4, is it only a nice weather car, a 7-month-year car, or can we drive it all year round? And I think with the road tests we've done over 1,000 kilometers of different road conditions, we've proven that you can drive a Porsche Carrera 4 all year round and feel quite safe and still enjoy your car and be in total control.
The Porsche's had a little help in handling the wintry conditions. Bridgestone has developed what the company says is the best snow tire on the market. They're called Blizaks.
Most revolutionary concept of the Bridgestone tire is the multi-cell compound, which I guess we can describe as like an aero bar. And it gives you a lot more traction in the snow and on ice, because when we roll on ice, we get the friction builds up a layer of water and we tend to hydroplane. And these micropores, like you see in the aero bar, tend to absorb the water and then dispel them, so we get a more true contact patch on the ice, which gives it incredible grip. Same thing going through the snow. These micropores are like biting at the snow as we go through it. So whether you're on ice or in snow, you're getting the extra grip. Plus that multi-cell compound, which is what I'm referring to with the aero bar, always remains soft. So you don't have the tire doesn't go hard, and you can keep getting continual grip while you're going through the snow or on the ice. And it's that much quieter as well, and that's one of the other aspects of that multi-cell compound, is that it gets a quiet ride. You don't get that hum of a winter tire, that beat, 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 beat that you normally associate with a full winter tire.
We're impressed all the heck. The vehicle's handled a whole lot better than I have. The only thing we don't know is whether the traction we're getting from this thing is the car or the tire. It's presumably some combination of the two. We've taken the thing through snow drifts. We've taken it on icy roads at maybe even a little over the legal speed limit. And you just swear you're driving on dry pavement.
Not only we have the four-wheel drive, but we also have the ABS braking system, and it's fantastic. You know, I could go down the highway with two wheels on the pavement, two wheels on the ice, let go the wheel, hit the brake at 100 miles an hour, and I wouldn't have any fear of the car, swerving left or right. It would just take a straight line and hold it until dead stop. And that's very impressive. And again, it's security, safety that you need behind the wheel. And it'd be nice if everyone could afford something like this.
They say in the four-wheel drive truck business, the only thing four-wheel drive does is get you stuck deeper, farther from home. And in a sports car, what four-wheel drive does for you is let you have your accident at a higher speed, because the traction this thing gets is so incredible that you're not aware that there's a problem until all of a sudden you have to turn the wheel and you look down, you sail right on by the corner. So given that you're aware of that, this is a car that you can literally drive year-round.
Now 58, 57, I'm on 58. He said no. Sold right here, $5,750. Sold another one, $5,750. Sold another one, $5,750.
The Toronto Classic Car Auction is considered one of the biggest in the country, attracting cars and buyers from around North America. We wondered if, like other businesses, the classic car market had been affected by the poor economy.
Well, I think over the past 2 years, generally, when the whole country and including the United States have been in recession, we've certainly seen a downswing in most classic cars, especially in some of the higher-end exotic and sports cars. But in the past 6 months, we've seen quite a recovery in classic car prices and especially in demand, and it's been led primarily by our customers in the U.S. The Jag V12 Roadster is a good example of how the market has fluctuated. In 1980, I bought that car for $20,000. In 1988, we sold that particular car for $60,000, but now better examples did sell as high as $90,000 and $100,000. And that same car today, you can buy for somewhere around $40,000 to $45,000. We've felt in the past 6 or 8 months there's been some excellent buys in the big classic market. That's cars generally that sell in the range of $150,000 and up. We've also seen a lot of activity in the small English sports car market. And a lot of this is driven by the Europeans, whose currencies at any given time, and especially now, are quite strong as compared to Canadian currency. And we've been shipping a lot of small cars such as TR3s, TR6s, MGAs, Austin Healey's, basically the small English convertible sports cars to the European market, primarily France, Germany, Holland, the Western European countries.
Close the bidding, $16,000.
Well, we have finally found the perfect Christmas gift for the man who has everything, and that man is Bill Gardner. Now, Bill is always complaining he doesn't have enough room for all the cars in his garage. Well, Bill, here it is. It's called the Modular 2. It's got a 56 Thunderbird on it right now. It'll go up to 6 feet. Then all you have to do is slide another car underneath. And if you want to move this 56 Thunderbird, you just take it right down to the floor. It's got wheels, and you can move it anywhere in the garage. Again, it's called the Modular 2. The Canadian distributor is Acanis in Whitby, Ontario. So, Bill, check under that Christmas tree this Christmas. Here's Bill.
Well, Brad, that hoist looks like a pretty good idea, but I'll tell you one thing. If the car up top is an old piece of Detroit iron like that T-Bird, you better put a diaper underneath it, or that car in the bottom is going to look like a Dalmatian by the morning. What I want to talk about this week is fan belt or drive belt systems on today's cars. Now, if your car's 5 or 6 years old, it wouldn't be at all uncommon to find 3, maybe 4 V-type fan belts like the ones I've got in my hand here today. And as a rule, each one of these belts was dedicated to a certain accessory, like the power steering, alternator, or air conditioner, maybe the smog pump as well. And you usually had brackets and adjustments that were quite complex for each one of these belts, and they required constant tensioning. They were a bit of a trick to replace. Now, in today's cars, we've gone to a belt like this, a multi-ribbed belt, or a serpentine belt as it's often referred to. You can see the length of this belt. It's quite flat and wide. It has a number of V-grooves on the inside, and this belt drives every single accessory with a single belt. And it also uses the back side of the belt to drive some of the accessories, which the other V-type belts did not do. We're going to have a look at a 93 pickup today to show you just how they work. Now, earlier I removed half a dozen fasteners that hold the upper shroud on. We can get that out of the way, and we can really see this belt system well now. And you can see how it gets that name Serpentine Belt. The belt snaking its way around all of these 7 pulleys. Now, it all starts down here at the bottom at the crankshaft pulley. That's the engine's crankshaft front pulley, and that's where all the power is derived for these accessories. The belt wraps its way around that crankshaft pulley, comes up here on the back side, and over to an idler on this side. Now, this is just a plastic idler here with a sealed bearing in here. This one doesn't move at all, but it just tensions the back side of the belt, or guides the back side of the belt around that pulley. And then the belt comes up and around the air conditioning compressor, wraps around it, and then it passes underneath the tensioner. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And then it comes up and wraps around the alternator, driving the alternator with the inner part, the multi-rib part of the belt, goes down and around and drives the power steering pump right here in the same fashion. Then it comes up and wraps around the back side of the belt, wraps around the water pump pulley. And that's a smooth pulley because it's up against the back side of that belt, or the smooth side of the belt. And it wraps all the way around that water pump and comes back out here at the bottom and back to the crankshaft. Now, as it's driving that water pump and circulating all the coolant, there's the water pump down in there, it's also indirectly driving these fan blades as well, so it does the engine cooling job as well. Now, there's an awful lot of tension on this belt, and that's provided by that automatic tensioner I talked about earlier. And in order to remove this belt for servicing any of these items, you're going to have to relieve the tension. There's a large coil spring in this tensioner assembly, and it's always trying to automatically adjust the slack side of that belt. If you want to remove it for servicing, you have to put a wrench on it and lever it up out of the way and then just pop the belt off. You can let the tensioner go gradually. And when we remove this belt, you're going to see just how long this belt is. It's quite a long belt in order to go around those 7 pulleys. But it's about roughly twice the width of a conventional V-belt. So there is a net savings. As we told you earlier, there may be 3 or 4 belts required in the old system, and that would stack up to being much wider than this single belt. Now, is this single serpentine belt a better system than those multiple V-belts we had earlier? I don't think there's much question that it is. It wraps the pulleys much better. This system's been out for a while too, and we've seen some awful high mileage vehicles come in here with the serpentine belt severely cracked, frayed, or actual chunks missing out of it, and that thing still holds in the pulleys okay and drives all the accessories. It's amazing how hard it is to get one of these things to come off. It's almost unheard of anymore to break a belt or have it come off on the highway. Now, what I've done here is I've snuck this belt around 6 of the 7 pulleys, and you can see all that I have to do in this system is just pull back on the tensioner with a wrench, slip the belt under it, and let it go. If you're used to working on those old V-belt systems, I'm sure you remember that it was a real pain in the neck to move all those multiple brackets and sliding tracks to try and tension all those V-belts. This system works much better. I'm going to put the safety glasses on and start her up. Go ahead, Richard. Now you can see how that belt wraps around all the pulleys. It's driving the water pump, the fan blades, the air conditioning compressor, underneath the idler and the tensioner, and around the alternator and power steering, and it's doing the whole works with one belt. Works quite well and lasts a long time. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 93.
Concept cars have been a part of the auto show scene since day one. Now, a new breed of show cars is being used to showcase alternative fuels, as well as exotic designs. Meet the Mustang Mach III. Not only is this car capable of accelerating to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.5 seconds, it's also a flexible fuel vehicle.
It is the future. It is a certain segment of the market that's going to be to meet the consumer tastes. You'll have to have those vehicles. And for our corporate responsibility, including cleaning up the environment, we certainly are committed.
While the Mach III is reminiscent of the 60s Mustangs, it has a 90s flavor. Under the hood is a 450 horsepower supercharged version of the all-aluminum 4.6-liter V8 found in the Lincoln Mark VIII. The fact that it's a flexible fuel vehicle means it can run on straight gasoline or a blend of 85% methanol and 15% gasoline. Special sensors monitor the mixture, and the onboard computer automatically adjusts engine operation for optimum performance.
Everybody asks, why don't you bring back the 65 Mustang, the original? So what this has is a lot of the styling cues that you'll see on our next generation Mustang. Certainly, I think you'll see some of the character lines along the side doors, the scoops and so forth. Maybe won't be that exaggerated, but you'll see those, I think, in future generation vehicles. The nice original floating Mustang horse in the front grille, I think you might see in future vehicles. And the all-new Mustang will be out in about a year, so we're really excited about it, and it'll be an addition to our line.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the new Lincoln Mark VIII, a car that received more press prior to its release than just about any other I can recall. The other thing that you will learn from this week's Test Drive is that the beauty of this car is much more than the sheet metal that surrounds it. The Mark VIII is about as sophisticated as cars can get today. Beneath the hood is a state-of-the-art 4-cam 32-valve V8 that produces a staggering 280 horses and 280 pounds-feet of torque. Performance with this type of power is, as one rightly expects, phenomenal. In the race to 100k, I required just under 8 seconds to accomplish the task. Now when you factor in the weight you're trying to motivate, this is nothing short of amazing. Again, when you factor in the weight and performance, the average fuel economy is rather good at 12.1 litres per 100 kilometres or 23.3 miles per gallon. However, if the onboard trip computer is accurate, one can travel at highly illegal speeds whilst consuming less than 9 litres per 100 kilometres or 31 miles per gallon. The item that makes this type of fuel economy possible are the new 4-speed automatic transmission and the air spring suspension. The transmission uses a new wide ratio strategy, meaning that when you want the power it's there, otherwise the engine is just loafing. The suspension improves things by literally hunkering down. At 88 kilometers an hour, the car is automatically lowered a little more than 3/4 of an inch. This reduces the coefficient of drag from 0.34 to 0.33. The other thing this strategy does is lower the center of gravity, vastly improving the high-speed handling characteristics. Two things you really notice when you're in the Mark 8 on the highway. A, it's very quiet, and B, it's exceedingly comfortable. The other nice thing about this car is that from 80 on up through the legal speed limit, this car moves like greased lightning. Perfect highway car. The suspension itself is a fully independent air spring setup that is controlled by a microprocessor. The beauty of the system being that it provides fully automatic load leveling both back to front and side to side. As well as featuring anti-lock brakes, which for the record stop this heavy car in just 119 feet from 80k, you have the advantage of traction assist. In a nutshell, when the traction assist system detects wheel spin, it applies the brakes momentarily to that wheel. All in all, it turns what would be a right horror to drive in the snow into a very civilized automobile. Ford claim, and I did verify, that with the system turned on, you can actually pull away on ice. At speed, the traction assist ensures that the 280 horses do not induce unwanted oversteer at rather inopportune moments. My pet peeve on this Mark 8 has to do with the fuel economy computer. Now right now it's telling us we've got 20 litres to empty. When you push the conversion it says 5 gallons. Granted there are 5 gallons left, but they're 5 US gallons, not British or imperial gallons as we use in Canada. One would think for $51,000 plus they could get the conversion figure right. The biggest drawback with any coupe style vehicle is getting in and out of the back seat, and the Mark 8 is no different. It's difficult to say the least. The seat has to be forward, you've got to fight your way around the seat belt, all the while there's nothing to grab a hold of. They need a grab handle on the roof area somewhere. Having said all of that, once you get back here in the Mark 8, there's ample headroom and actually quite a lot of legroom. The interior design follows that of the exterior, with everything being rounded, styled and shaped to give a very fluid appearance. Up front, the driver and passenger are treated to fully articulated power seats that feature an inflatable lumbar support. The driver's seat also features a 3-position memory. However, the lack of seat heaters is a major oversight. The dash is analog, easy to interpret and offers all the information one could want. Both the radio, which includes a cassette player and CD player, and the climate controls have been angled towards the driver, making them very easy to use. Now I have a problem with the trunk design on this Mark 8. First of all, it's very shallow, and secondly, it's very, very deep. Now I've placed some washer fluid back there. Anybody of average height would have a heck of a hard time retrieving it. That wraps it up for this week's test drive, except to say that the peace and serenity that you associate with surroundings like this is exactly what you'll find in the Mark 8, because unlike many other Lincolns, they've managed to keep the amount of wind noise to a very acceptable level.
It's been called the world's toughest four-wheel driving endurance event. And for the past 13 years, the Camel Trophy Adventure has traveled to the most remote corners of the world. In a test of both men and 4x4, this year's event will take place in the lost world of Sabah on the island of Borneo. Recently, 10 American candidates who had been chosen from 600 applicants took part in a qualification round in Grand Junction, Colorado. Starting at 6 in the morning, they had to show their proficiency at map reading. Then a brisk swim to get the blood flowing. A few minutes later, they were behind the wheel of Land Rover Discoveries, the same kind of four-wheel drive vehicle that will be used in Borneo. Next came a 6-mile run, followed by log chopping. In this simulation, the men were told they had to cross a piranha-infested river using a pole and a rope to span 3 drums, which represented rocks in the river. Only one man became a fish dinner. After 30 hours without sleep and more endurance testing, 2 men would be selected to represent the United States in the international trials in Rome. There, the field will be narrowed down to 16 teams from nations around the world. Incidentally, there is no cash prize that goes along with the Camel trophy. Just the trophy and bragging rights for a year.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns air filters. A good clean air filter, properly fitted, is a very important factor to the overall life of your engine and the fuel mileage of your car. This old dirty filter is telling us a story. It's got to be changed, and if we have a look at the filter cavity, that's going to tell us a lot about this filter as well, and that's something you should do. Check the inboard area of that filter and make sure that no dust or grit got past that old filter. That way you know that it was a good quality filter and you had the right fit. It's okay to have dust and grit on the outboard side, but anything that got past the filter is bad news for your engine. One of the easiest ways to determine if you've got a dirty filter is to pass a light around it and just check it visually. It's quite easy to see. You can see the dirty filter here in the clean one and how that light gets through. If you're driving a late model fuel injected vehicle, there's a darn good chance that your air filter is somewhat along this configuration. In any case, the same things apply. Use a good quality filter and check the fit and condition at regular intervals. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
Whenever I'm walking through a vintage car auction like this one, 2 thoughts always cross my mind. The first is, I wonder what cars are being sold new today, which will be considered collectible 30 years from now. You know, it's pretty hard to guess. Everybody's heard stories about someone finding a car in a barn that turns out to be a one-off Pierce Arrow worth $1 million. I don't know, I only ever seem to find junk in barns. But take a look at this car, Volkswagen Beetle. Now this is the single most popular model of car ever sold in the history of the car business, and yet here it is at a vintage auction. Okay, so it's got a trick paint job and a really stupid exhaust system. And over there is a '63 Ford Galaxy. I mean, that's the kind of car my father would have driven. Who knows what's going to become popular? A friend of mine who's a chief designer at Buick thinks the Ford Taurus station wagon has got a good chance of being a valuable car someday. But really, when it comes to appreciation of vintage cars, your guess is as good as his, and certainly as good as mine. Oh, and what's that second thought that comes to mind at vintage car auctions? Why did I ever sell that 1976 American Motors Hornet? I'm Jim Kenzie.
We've just enough time left to show you this beauty. It's a 1934 Duesenberg Sj. Now, only 2 of this particular model was ever built, and this is the only model to come with a supercharger and dual carburetors right from the factory. It puts out 320 horsepower. Now, back in '34, you could pick up one of these Duesenbergs for $17,000. Well, in 1985, this car became the first Duesenberg to sell for $1 million US. And if you want to pick it up at this particular auction, you got to dig deep and come up with $1.2 million US. But doesn't it make your mouth water? Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about mouth-watering cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 93 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas, for brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service. Trust your car to Midas.